Democrat activists said, defund the police. Public support for the police is about as high as I've seen in my lifetime. If you look at the polling data and the other data, you'll see that it's quite high. So what does Trump and the GOP do? Right. So you have a movement to defund the police, a viable movement, a strong movement, a protest movement. And instead of doing counteroffensive, instead of saying Democrats want to defund the police, we want to raise funding for the police. So what do? They go to Capitol Hill and they say the police are racist. Now, it's a little hyperbolic, I guess, but directionally it's true. Jared Kushner and Mark Meadows went to the Capitol Hill yesterday to meet with Senator Tim Scott to talk about how racist the police are, and now Joe Biden does an op-ed. Where he says, I want to give $300 million to the police. I want to fund community policing. So in real time, we just watched Trump lose yet again, the GOP lose yet again, as an extreme idea that the left created, advocated. High-profile people, including AOC, the Hamas caucus, and now Biden is saying, let's give the police more money. All right, let's give the police more money. Last night, the GOP tweeted, Joe Biden is racist, according to the 1994 crime bill. And then they quoted Senator Cory Booker. Right? That's full clown. Can you imagine like your job is messaging and persuasion? And you go, you know what we're going to do today? We're going to call Joe Biden a racist and quote Cory Booker from our GOP social media account because that'll get him. That'll get him good. It's amazing, really. Yeah, so yesterday, Kushner and Meadows, we got to go to Congress, talk about systemic racism. Mitch McConnell, too. They're all being gaslit by social media. They don't know how to look at polling and trends, right? If you look at the actual polling and trends, the polling is more radical than I am. The polling is, quite frankly, startling. Not surprising to me intellectually, but startling, which is weird. How can it be not surprising but startling? Right? Maybe I'm misspeaking. The point is, the public is crazier than I am. Let that sink in for a moment. The public is crazier than I am. So what's the data actually show about the public? The data shows that 71% want the National Guard brought in. The data shows that, this has changed now because the riots are kind of over. The data shows 78% or 71% want the National Guard. 58% want the military. 48% of Democrats want the military brought in. I don't want the military on American streets policing protests. I don't. The public does, though. So if my job is to win elections, which is not, thank God, because if it were my job to get the Republicans or Trump elected, I would be just banging my head against the wall at this point. Like, how are you people so fucking stupid? How are you so fucking stupid that when polling says people want the fucking U.S. military brought in to attack the looters and rioters, and public support for police is at record highs, Chicago aldermen, people of color, saying our neighborhoods are under attack, bring in the National Guard, public support for the police is high. The public is either saying the police are doing a great job or they need to do more. A large percentage of the public says the police need to do more. They're not being hard enough. And you look at all this data, and you go, you know what? We need to go to Capitol Hill. cure systemic racism, call the police racist, shit all over the police. And we need to call Joe Biden racist under the 1994 crime bill, which, by the way, isn't racist. Question for you. Before I tweeted out that the Congressional Black Caucus supported the 94 crime bill, did you know this? By the way, I fell for fake history. I remember one day this is like years ago when I said, the crack cocaine, the sentencing disparity between powder cocaine and crack cocaine is just racist. I can't believe it. And a conservative who's a never Trumper, by the way, but this is why I talk to everybody. Ted Frank said, no, the Congressional Black Caucus supported the 94 crime bill. I was like, no, they didn't. Come on, dude. Get out of here. Receipts, bro. So I did my research. The mayors of 8 majority black cities, Detroit, Atlanta, I don't know them off the top of my head, but you can look into this. They supported it. So black mayors, mayors of black cities supported the 94 crime bill. The Congressional Black Caucus supported the crime bill. The black community supported the crime bill. The number one issue in 1993, 1994 in the black community by an overwhelming margin was crime. Go watch New Jack Hustler. What's it called? What's that movie called? The Pookie, the Crackhead. Chris Rock's in it. I think Ice-T. Ice-T's in it. Tracy. Our friend Tracy is in it. And, like the New Jack City. There you go, New Jack. Go watch New Jack City. That, obviously is fictional and played up. But that's what the black community was dealing with, and just an epidemic of, just like the white community is dealing with an opioid epidemic, and the white community dealt with a meth epidemic, right? That's why I don't play into the racial stuff like a lot of people, because I grew up in a white community where people dealt with the meth epidemic. My brother went to prison for 10 years because he was a meth head and he shot his meth dealer, right? So I have friends of mine who went to prison. Well, they were high school friends of mine, went to prison for meth. So the meth went through the white community in the, say, 90s. And then now the opioids, I'm so old and out of that circle, but they're people that I knew and I was friendly with died of heroin overdoses. A couple people, actually, now that I think about it, who were my brother, friends, how do you say, brothers of my friend, 1 degree separation, in other words. So I'm not saying, oh, yeah, somebody from my town died. I'm saying friends of mine that I hung out with, their brothers died, right? Friends of mine, their brothers died. We're not like, oh, I heard a guy in a town. So the opioid epidemic has hit my life. The meth epidemic hit my life. The crack epidemic was going through the black community in the inner cities. That's why the 94 crime bill came. Go read what the Congressional Black Caucus was saying at the time. So it's just dumb. It's just dumb. It's just dumb. Well, it's not even good politics. So it's just wrong and dumb. Now I get that it's good for retweets to say that 94 crime bill is racist and retweet me, Democrats. I get that like makes you feel good, right? I get that's the opioid of the MAGA. Democrats are the real racist. That's the opioid. Remember Marx said religion is the opiate of the masses. Democrats are the real racists. It's the opioids of MAGA, of conservatives. Then you know that Joe Biden's a racist. He passed that crime bill, so we don't have to talk about racial issues. Whew. We just completely no longer have to talk about these issues because Joe Biden signed a 1994 crime bill, support overwhelming by black community. Oh, by the way, how are black voters? How did all that shake out? The biggest disconnect, the biggest divide between a lot of people, myself included, I got caught up in this. Joe Biden just smoked everyone in the South with the black vote. Smoked them. So all these woke people, Kamala Harris, Cory Booker, Peter Buttigieg, white privilege, this. Joe Biden's not talking about white privilege all the time because blacks in the South, the black community, they want solutions. They don't want to be hated. And they're tired of dealing with racist fucks, right? They're not saying grovel. Because what you see in these protests, mostly white people, who's actually watched the DC footage of Black Lives, is 80% white people. It's white women, wine ants, right? Awfuls. It's not black church ladies. Have you right? It isn't the choir ladies. The choir ladies want law and order. They're tired of racist fucks. They're tired of being, treated badly and having their views dismissed. They're not the ones out marching. It's white liberals who want to feel like, see, we're not racist. We're the good guys. And Team Trump and the GOP, they're falling for that con. You're being protested by the pussy hat people. The pussy hat people just rebranded as Black Lives Matter, but there aren't that many actual African Americans marching in those Black Lives. They're Becky marches. There you go. Just look at the footage. So, but Trump and Mitch and the GOP, they got gaslit by the whining ants, not realizing all the whining ants did was took the pussy hat off. They put on a Black Lives Matter shirt. They got rebranded pussy hat. They rebranded Women's March because Women's March was run by anti-Semites. So they rebranded Women's March, pussy hat, Black Lives. It's the same fucking people. And there's actually fewer people in these marches than the women's marches and the pussy hat marches. So Biden smoked. Biden smoked the black vote. Or smoked everyone else and got the black, killed everybody. So if you're online and you're on woke Twitter, they're like, oh, is it going to be Buttigieg? He's the next runner. He's having all these conversations about race, this and that. Biden just comes in, crushes it, right? Crushes the vote. And now Biden is saying we need to fund community policing. Why? I don't know why people don't think, because racism and being gaslit by wine ants. Are black people law and order? Right? Black people support law and order, same as white people. It's police brutalities, it's a problem. But if you're on woke Twitter, you're dealing with privileged, for the most part, privileged kids who got more money. They're in college, so they're away from a lot of their responsibilities in life. So they're living on student loans, and they don't have real obligations, and they're in these like insular worlds. They're just your typical college kids, right? So you're not like Joe Biden didn't let college kids control his campaign messaging. See, I have a couple of college kids complaining because their ideas are being challenged because they don't have an answer, right? They're like, oh yeah, there's so many people from the community out. You mean like other college kids, right? So like your friends in college who are completely insulated from most of these issues are out protesting, but the church ladies can't go to Walmart because looters destroyed it. And I didn't make that up. That's on audio. All their men in Chicago and all the women in Chicago. If you listen to what the actual black alderwomen and the Hispanic aldermen and all the women in Chicago were saying, they are saying, how are elderly, poor people going to get their medication? How are they going to get their food? These people don't have cars, right? They have to walk to CVS. Oh, CVS doesn't exist. They have to walk to Walmart. Walmart doesn't exist. That's the life people live, right? That's a life without privilege. But these woke college kids are like, oh yeah, every college kid is like that. Rebelling against mom and dad, right? Oh yeah, these adults don't know anything. Don't trust anyone under 30. Da 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 da. But people, over a certain age have to live in these communities. They have to live in these communities. So what do you do now? That's the whole point. What do you do? Because this is how I grew up. This is how I grew up. Real talk. Until I was 19, no, because I was 17. The first time I flew on a plane, I was 17. That was because I was flying to basic training for Army basic training, 17. First time I've been on a plane. My ears popped and I thought I was going to die. Didn't know anything, right? No idea. No conception of air travel. I'd never been further than an hour away from my house as a teenager because we didn't have a car that could make it more than an hour, right? Because car breaks down. Like, do you know what it's like to grow up and you can't really drive to places because your car might break down? And that sound of, trying to turn over the ignition and you have a junker car and you get laughed at and it backfires, that was my life. And so small town life, you just drive, you drive a junker car. And then you look at people in the inner city, and inner city conjures up conjures up an image of young men when it's majority, it's a lot of older women. It's a lot of grandparents raising children. That's the thing, that these people don't know anything. These woke activists don't really know about these communities. So a lot of grandparents, a lot of blended families and a lot of grandparents raising that generation of kids. So where are they going to go get diapers? Where are they going to go get formula? Where are they going to walk to? They're going to walk 5 miles now. I mean, just real. Where are they going to do it? That's if it's not like, if you've never had the thought, first of all, do I have money for groceries, and how do I get to the grocery store? You are privileged. So what happens now? You don't have a CVS and need diabetes medication or blood pressure medication. What happens? Nobody's talking about this, because if you're doing well, fight the power is like a very glib, tear it all down is a very glib, very privileged point of view, because you're like, I'll be fine, whatever, dude. Fight the power, hell yeah. It's all this young people in the streets, because you don't have to live with the consequences. If you're Chris Cuomo or Brian Stelter or whoever, or these woke college kids, they'll go back to college. They're still living on student loans. Now that's going to come due, and that's going to be quite the hangover. But you got, your FAFSA and your government money from loans. So you're like, what's it to you? I live with my friends in an apartment. We're young. We can just go walk. We can go walk a mile, wherever. Do you know how long a mile is to walk for somebody who's like 80? Right? 80 years old. To walk a mile and then grab groceries and then carry the bag back another mile. Have you just thought about that, right? That's what they have to do now. If it's even a mile, because the Walmart and CVSs are destroyed. So when you're on TV, it's not a fucking TV show, right? That's the childish age where we live in, where this is not a fucking TV show. You're watching it on your phone. You're watching it on the television. You're watching it on your laptop or your iPad. There are real lives who have to deal with that. You never watch the movies after that, right? You always watch the movie, people go in, destroy things. And, I always think, like, who's going to rebuild, right? That's if you have real empathy as a person. Then you think, what about the aftermath? Now what? And then everybody moves away. And that's that. Right? That's that. So who wants the police in those neighborhoods? The people who aren't criminals want them. Right? There's a line between, there's a big gap between the people committing the crimes and the people that they date and the people who have to live in those communities raising children. They support they support the 94 crime bill that every college will tell you is racist. Right? So if you ask college, oh yeah, they're racist crime bill. Okay, but then why did the Congressional Black Caucus support it in 1994? Now you can say it was a mistake, right? You can say that the 94 crime bill was a mistake. There was a lot of unanticipated consequences. It wasn't the right decision. Hindsight bias. But you can't call it racist when the Congressional Black Caucus supported it. You can't call it racist when all the majority black city mayors support it. It's just objectively not racist. You can call it a lot of other things. But for me, more broadly, is why does anyone think that's persuasive, right? Why do you, if you're a Trump campaign or the GOP, who do you think you're persuading when you say, according to Cory Booker, Joe Biden's a racist? Who do you think? Right? That's what, because that's how I look at things, right? I just look at things like I don't agree with bringing military in the police or bringing military into the protests or the riots, whatever you want to call it. I don't agree with that. But the polling says people want it. Doesn't mean you give it to the people, but it does mean that, so if I'm running on a law and order platform, maybe I shouldn't shit all over the police, right? Maybe I shouldn't make the emphasis on, the police are racist or whatever it is. Maybe I ought to focus on something else, right? That's what the data comes from. You check, well, okay, these people are fucking crazy. I'm not sending in the military, but if I want to win re-election, it's like, okay, so the vibe right now is to ignore the Pussy Hat Brigade, which rebranded and appropriated Black Lives Matter, is another way to attack Trump. It's just another attack vector on Trump. And it's a smaller attack vector because the marches are nothing. The March for Life is bigger. The March for Life is bigger than every one of these protests combined. Fact check that, right? The March for Life, which is an anti-abortion march once a year, is bigger than all of these protests that happened combined. People were saying, oh yeah, DC is going to be this as big as the women's. No, it isn't. I was at the women's march. I know what it was like. For me, and nobody listened because they're idiots. When I went to the women's march, I couldn't believe it. You couldn't walk 7 blocks. We had to walk just to get a cup of coffee. You could 7 blocks anywhere. Pick a direction. Huge. Right? And it was huge, right? So well, watch this footage of these supposed huge marches. Like, they're just not huge. I've been to the fucking protests. I was at every major DNC protest in 2016. I know what a big protest looks like. I know what a crowd looks like. I know what, the March for Guns thing was bigger than the Black Lives Matter protest. So why in the world are you adjusting your position in a way that isn't going to win you votes and will lose you votes and lose your enthusiasm? Because all your people who live in DC are like, oh yeah, it was huge. No, it wasn't. These people didn't march in the Women's March. I was there. Right? I was there. Jared and Ivanka weren't there. They don't know shit. Mark Meadows was there. They don't know shit. But they talked to their friends. Oh, DC's a 90% Democrat town. Of course, everyone you know is going to hate Trump. Right? Everyone you know hates the police. But they'll call him real quick. Right? One of the better videos was I don't even know what's real or staged anymore. There's so much shenanigans going on. But Antifa was harassing a guy. The guy comes out with some kind of Wolverine hand thing. Call the police. They're harassing another Hispanic guy who pulls out a chainsaw and says some things that I find offensive. I'm not standing with that. And call the police. Like, wait, I thought you hated the police. I thought we needed to defund the police. But now you love them. Now you call the police. all this people don't like the police stuff. It's virtue sick. It's fake. Fake. But people are falling for the psyop. Trump's falling for it. The GOP's falling for it. Because you realize too, like the media they consume has a certain message, and then that's where you're getting all your information from, right? I don't get my information from the media. I get my information from what I've done and my own knowledge. And I can just tell you if a protest is massive or not. I can tell you based on my understanding of human nature if people are doing empty virtue signaling. I can just tell you. I can tell you that defund the police should have been a catastrophic happening in Democrats, and they're winning the message because there was no counteroffensive. There was no so here's the way I look at it. If Democrats can call everyone they don't like a white supremacist with no knowledge, then you can just say you support defunding the police. It's up to them to deny it. Because that's the way the left plays. You have to deny what they say. They'll go, you're white supremacist. And no, I'm not. I opposed the 94 crime bill, which was racist, and Biden supported it. Therefore, but you're right. It's like a fucking inquisition, right? But you're on the defensive. For me, you call me these names, I'm just like, well, you support, fucking this. How dare you? Well, I mean, I can show you stuff that you posted, and I can show stuff that your friends posted. Well, yeah, but that's different. How dare you say it? It's like, well, okay. So So they can say Trump and everybody who voted for him is a white supremacist. Then the messaging for the GOP should have been Kamala Harris supports looting and riots. Make her deny it, right? Make her deny it. Because she does. We all know she does. Then make her disavow it, and then the story is Kamala Harris disavows looting and rioting. See? This is not fucking complicated. You just have to have some fucking courage, some moral courage, a willingness to take the shots, and a strong mind that doesn't get gaslit into false reality, into psyops. You just say there's rioting and looting right now happening in Oakland. Kamala Harris supports this. She's all about this. So she either says nothing, which silence is consent now, we've been told, which they haven't thought that one through. Right? So now they're saying silence is consent. But I thought consent had to be affirmative. You had to be enthusiastic about consent. So they're now saying silence is consent. So that means if you say Kamala Harris supports rioting and looting, and she doesn't deny the accusation, then she consents to it. Right? Those are the rules. That's what I mean. I don't make this stuff up. I just apply the rules that are applied to me and that are applied to everyone else. And the rules are silence is consent. So if you say Kamala Harris supports looting and rioting and she doesn't deny that, then she agrees with it because she's now silent. That's the rules. They make these rules up. I don't make them up. My rules are based on decency and human compassion, Christian charity, redemption. Kamala Harris kept innocent people in prison. You know that, right? She's a truly bad person. Kamala Harris didn't tweet a couple bad racial jokes. Kamala Harris sent black mothers to jail. The woke left, though, loves her. Anyway, we're digressing a little bit. But that shows you the absurdity of the world we live in. Where if you tweeted a bad joke, a bad racial joke, canceled. But if you keep a black person in prison when they belong out, and you frame black people for crimes, then you deserve to be VP. So you have to just the GOP just hasn't, or they. I mean, there's a lot. I've met a lot of these people. I met a lot of Democrats too. So it's a myth to think that the Democrat politicians are really any better. these people, I've had conversations with many, many high-level politicians. Almost always, it's like you're talking to a plastic. Think of the most boring date you've ever been on in your life, where all you want to do is get out of there in a graceful way because you're not mean enough to say, check, please. Right. And you're thinking, God, this is just dragging. That's 90% of politicians. They are not thinkers. They're not reading books. They're not studying poetry. They're not even watching cinema. They are the most boring thought. So the GOP, most of these people are not interesting. They're not smart. They don't get it. Intuitively, stuff that we understand, they don't understand. But the flip side is that's because those are the kind of people who run. And then the question is, why don't people like me run? And the answer is, if people like us have real talent, do you want to deal with that, right? You're like a martyr. Unless you have a martyr, to be a successful politician, elected official, whatever we want to call it, you have to have the intersection of you're okay with being a martyr and a high level of talent. How many people with high level of talent think, I'm just going to go be abused. I'm just going to go be crucified. I'm just going to have every family member's life destroyed. So you have to, right? Or so if you have that kind of martyr complex, you're what's called a sub. And the GOP, so that's why you're like, why are these GOP so pathetic? Because they're subs. They're in BDSM terms, they're like that character from Billions. They're like Chuck. I think his name's Chuck. I'm never good with names. So what you end up with is people who their kink is being humiliated publicly. That's why you're like, why don't they fight back? You mean, why don't submissives in the GOP? Why don't people who want to wear dog collars around their necks and be walked around on all fours with a leash? Why don't they fight back? Because they love this public humiliation. This is their kink. So GOP politicians, we feel like, oh, wow, that guy's being attacked. Like, no, he's getting off. It's his kink. So you're voting for people who want to be led around rooms, crawling on all fours with dog collars on their necks. And why don't they fight back? Gee, I mean, there's your answer, right? There's your answer. Unreal, right? You'll never see Kellyanne Conway and George Conway's relationship the same, will you? I've said this forever. Oh, Ali was here. He said Chuck Rose. People are like, how is it that George Conway gets humiliated by his wife? We're watching. It's gross. When you think about it this way, it's like I almost threw up. When I had this realization, I almost threw up. We're watching their kink in real time, right? We're watching a dom sub dominatrix dynamic. It's like disgusting, because then you're like, oh my God, this is so gross. Do you know how much fun they're having once the cameras are off at this public humiliation stuff that happens? Oh, I can't believe Kelly, because this is what they do. He humiliates her, and then she punishes him, when they go home together. Oh. Enough of that. There's an expression: what once it's been seen, it cannot be unseen. And now, once you understand that, frankly, it's kind of mortifying, right? It's mortifying to think about. Jesus. Yuck. Cigar is really good, but it's like, just thinking about that now, I'm like about to dry heave. That though is there. That's I would say the GOP, a full third of them are what you would call just total subs. That's why they don't fight. So then what do you want to do? Well, you have to support aggressive people, but then aggressive people do, have said things or do things that are a little aggressive, and then you're like, oh, I can't back that guy, he's too scary or whatever. Trump hit that sweet spot, right? But Trump was a once in a lifetime candidate. Trump was a once in a lifetime candidate. And we won't see that again. You won't see many fighters. And you don't see how many Democrats are fighters too, right? Because my audience is largely Republican, even though I'm not Republican, I talk a lot about Republican issues, but how many Democrats are you're like, that guy's a fighter. That guy's just, even Swalwell is like a joke. He tries to be a fighter and he looks like a buffoon. He's farting on TV and stuff. So it isn't like there are a bunch of Democrats who are just throwing bombs and killing the game. They're a little more duplicitous, a little shadier. I don't know, though. I mean, as Mitch McConnell and Adam Schiff are kind of evenly paired. So Mitch, he stopped the nomination. And, in my view, this was completely against every norm that I believe in, but he did it, and Democrats would have done it. I get the logic. Garland shouldn't have been blocked, just on principle. If you asked me, should a duly elected president, Supreme Court justice be blocked? But then look what they did to Kavanaugh. Before that, they did that to Clarence Thomas, and they did to Robert Bork. I get the logic, so I'm not shedding any tears for Garland. I'm just saying that on principle, what Mitch did to Garland was a shady thing to do. And what Adam Schiff has done is a shady thing to do. But the idea is the Democrats don't have that many really good fighters either. Republicans, you have, I don't know, Jim Jordan. Gowdy was exposed as a front. I was the first person to call out Gowdy back when people still believed him. Remember that? 2017? Oh, yeah, you're wrong, Mike. You don't know shit. You don't know nothing. I go, Gowdy's a fraud. And now people are like, oh, wow, Gowdy's a fraud. Yeah, welcome to 2020 when it's too late to do shit about it. Thanks for paying attention in 2017. And then people are like, well, how'd you know he's a fraud? I'm like, because I know what lawyers can do, and he didn't issue subpoenas, right? And then it comes out, Matt Gaetz comes out and says, oh, yeah, leadership wouldn't let us issue subpoenas. It's like, right, that's how I knew Gowdy was a fraud. That's how I knew Gowdy was a faker, is because I know what he could have done, and I know what he didn't do. So by virtue of not doing what he could have done, he's a fraud. If you don't know why Gowdy's a fraud, just go away. Go do your research. I don't have time for this. There's no time for the slow of the week. In church, they have time for the slow of the week. I suggest you go to church or temple, mosque, shul. They have time for the slow of the week. We don't have time. It doesn't take much to figure out. The fact that you don't even know this since 2020 also shows what a failure that quote-unquote conservative media is, right? It's like, how can anyone not know at this point that Gowdy's a fraud? Oh, because you watch Hannity. So how would you know? Well, there's your first problem, right? There's your first problem. Where are you getting your news from? These people. Anyhow, right now, the GOP in real time and Trump in real time is losing the debate on defund the police. I told you they would, and they are. Thanks for watching, Mike Cernovich. Cernovich.com. CERNOVICH.com. I have no interest in inviting guests to talk to me. I have call-in shows for that. Cernovich.com.